Good afternoon and good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us as we come together to mark Rare Disease Day tomorrow, the 28th of February. I'm Julie Gosper, Managing Director for Rare and Specialty at Sciensus. A pharmacist by training, I've dedicated decades to improving access to treatments for people living with rare diseases and the carers who support them. Today is more than just an awareness campaign. It is about connection between patients, families, clinicians, innovators, and advocates, all working together towards making life with a rare disease easier, more supported, and better understood. At Sciensus, we are privileged to walk alongside many people living with rare conditions. And what we see every day is the power of partnership between care teams, home care nurses, pharma teams, and most importantly, patients themselves. Today's discussion brings together voices from across that landscape. We'll explore what's driving change and what still needs to shift so that every patient receives not only treatment, but compassionate, continuous support. I hope today's conversation sparks fresh ideas for how, together, we can continue to make a meaningful difference. I'm delighted to welcome our incredible panel, and it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Dr. Raymond Hummel. Ray is Vice President of Rare Disease Strategy at Sciensus, and his depth of experience and passion for this community speak for themselves. As you hear from Ray, you'll quickly understand why he's the perfect person to guide today's discussion and lead our Q&A session. Please post your questions in the Q&A panel chat throughout the webinar for discussion at the end. Anything we don't have time to cover today, we will do our best to address in the near future. Over to you, Ray.
Thanks, Julie. I appreciate that warm introduction. And thank you to everyone who's joining us here today. As Julie said, I'm Dr. Ray Hummel, and I serve as a Vice President of Rare Disease Strategy for Sciensus. I'm actually a veterinarian by training, but today I serve as a bridge for American sponsors who want to bring their rare disease therapies to Europe, which is the world's second largest biopharmaceutical market. I'm delighted to be here celebrating my 11th Rare Disease Day. For anyone new to this community, Rare Disease Day began actually in Europe in 2008 on February 29th, which is a deliberately rare day. So let me briefly frame our discussion today. What is a rare disease? And kind of set the definition. You know, rare diseases are actually defined politically. They're not scientifically defined, and there's really no definition, regulatory grade of ultra rare disease. Like in the United States, for example, a rare disease affects fewer than 200,000 people. But in the European Union, it must be life-threatening, chronically debilitating, and affect no more than 5 in 10,000. Sometimes you'll see it referred to as 1 in 2,000, where special efforts are needed to address it. But behind the numbers are real people, real families, and real challenges. My personal connection is a story where my professional and my personal worlds have collided. Let me tell you a little bit more about it today. My personal connection, I've been in the biopharmaceutical industry for over 35 years. But my professional work didn't really intersect with my personal life until my daughter Meredith was diagnosed with fascio-scapulohumeral muscular dystrophy, but also just called FSHD, rather than that mouthful. It's probably the most common muscular dystrophy affecting both men and women of all ages. Later, my son Jonathan received the same diagnosis. You know, we're joined here today by Mark Stone, as you can see his picture. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the FSHD Society, and he will actually share his perspective on leading the largest patient advocacy organization for this community. Under Mark's leadership, I've seen the society more than triple in size, and today there's over 10 biopharmaceutical and biotechnology companies developing more than 12 therapies for FSHD. Yet, despite all of this progress and optimism, there are still no approved treatments. Our family's journey has not been easy. Meredith first received several misdiagnoses. She was diagnosed with Marfan syndrome and vasovagal syncope before finally receiving a clinical diagnosis of FSHD and idiopathic epilepsy. Genetic testing was not available at the time that my daughter got diagnosed. Both my children now use wheelchairs to ambulate. Jonathan, my son, underwent a 14-hour back surgery to correct scoliosis. Two 30-inch cobalt chrome rods were placed into his back, and that left him with the inability to walk. Rare diseases don't affect just one person. They ripple outward like a pebble dropped into water, touching families, caregivers, communities, and the entire healthcare ecosystem. Let's talk about the broader burden, including the emotional, practical, and financial aspects. When my daughter Meredith and I helped the Muscular Dystrophy Association build its neuromuscular data hub some years ago, the estimate was this, and it always stuck in my mind. 250,000 people in the US are living with a rare neuromuscular disease. And we estimated at the time it cost about 4 billion, that's with a B, 4 billion annually to the healthcare ecosystem. And those costs included things like specialist care teams, physician occupational therapy, respiratory support, mental health professionals, and durable equipment. And many essential items are not covered by US insurance systems like wheelchair ramps, accessible home modifications like our shower, and vans capable of transporting 425-pound wheelchairs. Our Honda Odyssey van is an example, cost more than 60,000 US dollars. Our family had to move during a recession from a 2-story home to a more expensive 1-story home because our children could no longer climb the stairs. But in response to these challenges, our family decided not to stand still, and we decided to fight back using our voices. Together, we published more than 50 articles on rare diseases. We contributed to multiple podcasts and webinars. We authored 2 Springer books, one on muscular dystrophies and one on rare disease drug development. Jonathan went on to graduate from Harvard University and now works as an AI neuroscience researcher in San Francisco. Meredith has been a disability and mental health advocate for more than 15 years. She recently married a European and now lives in Belgium. Last year on Rare Disease Day, she shared with us and our chief scientific officer what it means to live with FSHD. I'm proud to work for Sciensus, which recently partnered with Rare Patient Voice, and I work predominantly with Pam Kosick and a few colleagues. That's an organization that connects patients and caregivers with research opportunities across rare and common conditions. And we gathered new insights from the rare disease community, and I'd like to share a snapshot of what we learned. So while you're looking at this slide, I'm going to give you a couple of figures here. Our survey actually included 860 participants across Italy, the United Kingdom, France, Spain, and Germany, capturing the experiences of patients and caregivers. It offered a contemporary view of how 217 rare disease patients and caregivers navigate the treatment access and support. While many report systems that function reasonably well, the findings reveal persistent structural gaps that continue to shape daily burden, well-being, and the equity of access for a meaningful minority. Let me give you an example. For most respondents, medication access is manageable, but while the collection times were under about an hour to get their products. However, this masks a significant subset. More than 1 in 4 spend over an hour collecting treatment, and around 1 in 10 spend more than 2 hours. These repeated demands create a substantial logistical burden and highlight ongoing geographic and pathway level inequities. Home delivery basically stood out as one of the clearest unmet opportunities. Over half the respondents either lack access to home delivery or unaware it exists, despite strong evidence that it would improve their quality of life. And it's often described as it could be significant or even transformative. When healthcare services are available, experiences remain mixed, reflecting fragmented delivery models and inconsistent quality across countries and providers. The financial and emotional impacts further differentiate the patient experience. While many report little or moderate financial strain, nearly 1 in 5 face significant economic pressures related to travel, time off work, or associated costs. The recommendations from all this is clear. Reduce logistical burden through more flexible and localized access, expand and standardize home delivery while improving awareness, strengthen reliability and safeguards against treatment delays, and provide targeted financial support for those at highest risks. If you'd like to explore any of these findings in more detail, please feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to share our first white paper summarizing the overall results. A second paper, which is currently in development, will take a deeper look at the patient's qualitative responses. Let me introduce today's speakers. We have a really inspiring group with us today. Mark Stone, who I kind of mentioned to you already, and then Dr. Cinzia Dorigo. She's a pharmacist, a friend, a former colleague, and a co-author of my book on rare disease drug development. She currently works at Alexion as the regional head of country operations in Europe and created the Rare Disease Consortium concept at a CRO we used to work at. Dr. Sharif Ralph, our new clinical director of cancer at Sciensus, brings deep clinical and oncologic industry experience, and he'll share his insights as a practicing physician as well as a colleague. And then Helen Adshead, she was recently named a Queen's Nurse, and I believe that she exemplifies the best in nursing. She has kindly connected with us a patient living with a rare condition who receives medication delivered by Sciensus, and that's Jibril, or we'll refer to him here today as Jib Arshad. And he's a patient living with Mercurio syndrome, also known as mucopolysaccharidosis type 4. He receives his treatment through Sciensus and is an accomplished speaker. We're honored to have him here with us today. So welcome aboard, everybody, and thanks for here. Let's move on to the panel section of this webinar. We're going to start this off with Jib. We're going to talk about a topic, living rare, kind of provide the human perspective here. Jib, I got a two-part question, so I'll just start with the first part, and then when you're done with that, we'll go to the second one. But first of all, when did you first learn you had Mercurio syndrome, and what was like that experience kind of like for you?
So I was quite lucky in that I got diagnosed quite early, and my parents are medical, so I got medical care that I needed. However, you don't really learn much about it. You don't really accept it until you become like a teenager. So 14, 15, you notice that all your friends, they're all growing taller. You have the surgeries, the interventions, and you just start realizing that you're different, and then it hits in. And now that I'm supposed to be an adult, it affects everything I do.
So I've got another part to this question here. You know, how has this syndrome shaped your kind of day-to-day life, and how does it affect you now, either visibly or invisibly?
So visibly, I've got the whole restricted height, weak, low strength, low stamina, weak joints, etc. But invisibly, it's the social aspect from how people perceive me and just not knowing whether I'll meet someone else like me out there. That level of isolation is just insane. You just feel so alone.
Sorry to hear that. I have heard similar things from my daughter and son sometimes. I'm living with FSHD. We're going to switch gears here and go to the patient advocacy group perspective, and I'm going to switch over to Mark here. Mark, from what you hear in the community, what are some of the emotional challenges that people with rare diseases face?
There. I'll pick up, Jim, where you left off. Isolation. Isolation is a common connection between all rare diseases. Because you're rare, there's nobody like me. I've not talked with anybody like me, anybody going through the same issue and path. There's also fear. As soon as the diagnosis hits, worst case scenario, we typically jump to that. Sometimes it's that bad, sometimes it's not, but it's always fear of the unknown, which then leads to that third ingredient of uncertainty. I can't plan for the future. I don't know what I'm going to be, where I'm going to be physically, emotionally, etc. in 3 months, in 6 months, in 9 months. So future is taken away. And if that's left unchecked, helplessness and hopelessness sinks in. It's interesting, and I'll just say this one more comment about that question. Just yesterday, I was talking to an individual, and what you don't know is when I arrived here in 2017, I did something I'd never done before. But in analyzing the field that we were in and looking at the assets that I believe we could assemble, I actually said, we're going to have treatment to our families by 2025. Missed it by that much. But here's what he said, and it pierced me, and it showed how much hope, not just hope so, but hope, genuine hope, plays into our families' lives and helping them live better. He said these words: I would have preferred having the hope for a treatment in 25 and not achieving it yet than not having that hope at all. And he said, thank you. I know we'll get there. That's hope. And that combats these other things, but hopelessness leads to a downward spiral. And the mental health is not been focused on. We focused on how to fix the disease. We focused on how to help other people, but mental health a lot of times gets the back seat in our efforts and engagements, and it ought to be front and center, just like trying to get a treatment to stop a disease.
Mark, I couldn't agree with you more. I've seen the mental health issues. The more you dig into it and the more patients you meet and the more people you talk to, I see a resounding theme. It doesn't matter what disease you have with. I work with a lot of different rare diseases, and I see the same thing. And I also agree with you on your other points as well. And, one of the things I think is that I have seen facets of humanity by dealing in the rare disease community that I've never seen anywhere else. I mean, I would say some of the rare patients I've met have shown the most incredible strength. Can you talk about how people find the support they need after getting diagnosed?
I have a philosophy just of general society and life. We thrive when we live in genuine, authentic, caring communities. We do. The way to to punish prisoners is to put them in solitary confinement. We're not good alone. We're not good isolated. But when we create, as patient advocacy organizations, as rare disease groups, when we create genuine community and we bring a group of people together, that then allows the isolation to go away, fear subsides, and uncertainty. While you still don't know the future, you can learn from people that are further along on the journey than you are. And then out of the richness of that community, there's a mission to accomplish. And then that community unleashed allows empowerment to go into the individual. They feel suddenly powerful or empowered over a disease that has otherwise left them powerless. And that has reclaimed lives, and not an overstatement, reclaimed marriages and relationships in full. So I think that the actual basis of everything is community. First thing I did when I got here, I built communities all over America and now around the world through a world alliance of groups like ours, because it's so essential.
Yeah, Mark, I always appreciated your global perspective. And so, Chinji, we're going to turn gears here a little bit from innovation to access. We're going to kind of try to get the industry viewpoint. And Chinji, from your experience in rare diseases, I know you personally, so I know it spanned from kind of poacher to gamekeeper. You've been on the CRO and the service side. Now you're on one of the leading rare disease companies in the world. But from all of your experience in rare diseases, what new types of treatments are emerging and what makes it hard to deliver to everyone that needs them?
Thanks, Ray. I think there are two things that I would like to say, especially after that I listened to Mark and Jim, right? That the pharma company realized that, of course, we need to drive innovation and development of new type of medicine, right? We are going to targeting medicine, to very new type of modalities to deliver treatment. But the most important thing is that we realize as pharma companies that we treat people, right? So we have to cure the person, not to treat only the disease, because otherwise, and we can improve the outcome of our treatment of the disease if we focus on the person and not only on the disease, right? And in terms of innovation, the science helps us a lot, right? There is a lot of focus now on the gene therapy, on the new things about the RNA based therapy with the silencer of the RNA, the CRISPR platform, cell therapy with the CAR-T. We are really transferring a lot of experience from oncology and rare disease nowadays and learning from different modalities and how to apply cell therapy treatment in rare indication, the oligonucleotides. And these new modalities to treat and to identify treatment are very important if we think about that about 70% of the people suffering with rare disease receive a diagnosis where they are in the chilled out. 80% of these diseases are genetic driven. So if we really find a way to cure the disease, we are opening the opportunity for a healthy life for the people for the remaining of their life, with a huge impact for the person, of course, but also for the economic, social health and the healthcare system, right? So that is really where the industry is going. However, there are challenges that still we need to overcome, challenges that are driven by the complexity of the science combined with the complexity of rare disease. And that means that we have high risk development with high cost, and the challenges with the scalability of this disease, right? Of the scalability of the solutions, and when we enter in the commercial setting. And moreover, the part about the reimbursement of the treatments, right? Because these are all new complex modalities that they don't have yet a way or a well-defined pathway from a regulatory perspective to achieve approvals and then reimbursement. And last but not least, the health equity part, right? Because we need also to consider the part related to the highly specialized sites that can be involved in these new product and modalities development versus where the patients are based, and how we can link the opportunity for all patients to be treated. So that's really key areas where the industry is focusing to find also a solution.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Cinzia, for that. I'm going to switch over to Sharif now. As a physician, how do you decide how and when to bring in new treatments into a patient's care plan?
Thank you, Ray. Before I answer the question, I'd like to say that I come into World Rare Disease Day today as a person who experienced that personally. My daughter was diagnosed with a rare form of autoimmune disorder last year, which changed not her life, just the whole family's life. Yeah. So I have a different look on how things are happening, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here among people like Jib, Mark, who both have done amazing, and our colleagues, and of course yourself. But to answer your question, going back to how we decide to bring a new treatment, medicine is evidence-based. Everything has to be tried and tested in a very controlled environment to ensure safety, very important, and efficacy as well. We're not going to adopt a new treatment if it's not going to be superior to the existing treatment. Because what is the point? We tried that, we have good experience with it. So evidence-based is really important. And we rely very heavily on very well-constructed clinical trials. That is phase 1, which is safety, looking at safety. First in human drugs, is it safe to give to humans or no? And at what dose level? And if there is a stimulus that works, move to a phase 2, where you can try it on a larger group, compare it to the standard of care, in a controlled small environment to see again what the stimulus is coming there, and there is a positive signs, you go into a large, very expensive phase 3 clinical trials. When it comes to rare disease, there is no clinical trials. We talked about patients who European definition, less than 5 in 10,000. So, it's just, we're talking about very, very small number indeed. So the clinical trials data doesn't exist. And if we're going to wait for these, we're going to lose so many patients who are going to be left suffering untreated unnecessarily. So I think there are two things that happened recently that has really changed the paradigm of how we're thinking. One is understanding of the human genome. And I think that has been a step in the very positive direction, because it allowed us to understand a lot more about the illnesses and what's driving them. And then perhaps we can start looking at treating those. But when you're faced with a rare disease, you only look at peers experience, because there's no data to support you. So you start ringing a friend or an old colleague or your old professor, or actually you reach out across the world to America or somewhere else, where somebody may have an experience. And that contact gives you the confidence to try a new drug in an area where there is no data to back you. Yeah. But then where the magic starts to happen, really, because once you start looking after these patients and you've had support from colleagues from a distance, and you see some improvement and you document all these things, suddenly you have evidence, because every interaction with every rare disease patient is evidence. We're generating evidence as we go along. And if we all have the foresight and the duty of care is to collect this evidence and share it together, then we're going to have a repository of data. What works, what doesn't work, when to use it, and how long to use it for, and where to avoid it, and how to deal with the side effects. And I think, certainly 20 years ago, I would dread to think what we used to do then. But nowadays, with the advent of the internet and Google and AI, and really there is hope. And this is what I want to say, that it is a difficult area to be in, and sometimes it takes a while to get to the right treatment. But I'm full of hope, because I'm seeing people like yourselves doing all the good work you do. I'm seeing the advancement in science, and I'm definitely going to see improvement in a very short time. But you do need that support. You do need that somebody who tried it before, or because you don't want to harm anybody by introducing a medicine that has never been tried before in a new condition where you know very little about. So I can't stress the importance of collaboration here. And as a multinational organization, somebody like Mark will have more information about how to treat, FHSD that more than a lot of doctors, because he has in touch with a lot of people. He has got a lot of information. We can go and ask. We can ask patients.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we do things. I hope that answered that question.
No, it did indeed. And thank you for sharing your story, your personal story. As one caregiver to another, I'm glad you're part of the team that's working against trying to help the rare disease community in every way we possibly can. So you're personally invested now.
Sure.
Jib, getting back to the patient, how did you build your healthcare support network, and what was your kind of experience in getting access to the treatment you needed?
So my actual, where I really got involved was around the phase 3 clinical trial for my enzyme replacement therapy, Vimizim.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I really started getting involved with the local MPS society and the networks and meeting patients. And one of the big drivers for me there was that for once a week, I met someone with the same condition as me.
Yeah.
And we just hung out as people. He had the same condition, but he had a different set of access requirements, and we helped each other. And it was just a case that we'd go out and we'd force ourselves to deal with the world, and more to the point, we forced the world to deal with us.
There
And
you
we
go.
just,
I love that.
yeah, we just became people and realized that actually, you know what? Two dwarfs wandering around town, yes, we're going to get stared at, but most people are friendly. Most people just want to help. And a case of, mate, can you grab that for me, or can you pass me that? And it works. And since then, we've just grown that network, and every year we hang out. We've got a few people. We planned to go to a conference in 2020, but that didn't happen because the world stopped turning.
Yeah.
But the group is still together. We still talk. We still catch up. We arrange weekends away. If one of us has a problem, we put it in the group, and you can guarantee that someone else with that condition has an idea of how to fix it, or has tried something stupid that's worked, and yet
Yeah, sure.
no other able-bodied person would come up with that because it doesn't affect them.
No, exactly. I hear you. I remember when my son went to his first FSHD Society meeting, and he said, "Dad, other than my sister, I never met anybody with FSHD." It was an epiphany, and I think it made him feel a lot less alone. That's what I'm hearing from you. I'm going to go back just as we close off this topic on innovation to access with Sharif again. And Sharif, can you explain how kind of working closely with home healthcare services helps ensure getting patients get smooth and consistent care? I mean, you heard maybe some of the introduction from the front. We just got that survey coming out here, but I would love to hear your personal take on that.
First of all, I raise my hand, Ray, just to say what a fantastic testimony you've given us, Jib. Meeting a person with a similar condition and what it meant to you. And I can relate to that because that's really powerful. And we heard something over the last couple of days that people with rare disease are born to solve problems because they have to find a way to do things. So
Yeah.
well done, you. Thank you. It's really beautiful. Looking at home care treatment and how can that help people, we've seen the survey. Most of the centres that would be able to deal with a rare disease tend to be in large cities, university hospitals or research centres, and they're not easily accessible to a lot of people with the condition. So there are logistics problems of getting to and from hospitals and getting medication in time and all these things that are attached with this. So having ability to receive treatment at home makes a huge difference to a person's life. Not just emotionally, not just financially, not just physically, but I think is that the fact is that there is somebody else out there looking out for you to make sure you get your treatment on time, you're well looked after, they check on you, is hugely impactful. And I think we are very lucky to be, and fortunate to be working in an organization that potentially can facilitate a lot of that for a lot of people.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we're going to move on to another topic, kind of care beyond the hospital, and get into that kind of home healthcare service, kind of home environment. And the best person I think to do that would be Helen, because she deals with this every day. So she knows this better than anybody probably on this call here. And Helen, I've got multiple questions for you here, but if you could just tell us kind of what are some of the practical and emotional parts of supporting patients when care happens at the home rather than a hospital setting. And then I'll go with a second thing. But I also, maybe even for people who are joining the call but aren't familiar with home delivery, we deal with it every day, so we just assume we know. Could you kind of explain kind of what a typical day might be like with home care delivery, and then answer that question?
So home care delivery, so with ERT patients, the medications actually get delivered to the patient. If there has been an issue with that, and some of the services, the medication is delivered to the nurses before they start their day. So okay. They'll go to local depots, come down from Burton overnight, go to local depots, and then the drivers will deliver them out to nurses before 8:30 in the morning, so the nurse can start their day.
That's awesome.
For your question, Ray, so for many people living with a rare disease, the home becomes the new clinical environment, and nurses are the ones that make that transition safe and workable and humane. So our work is grounded in a structured home care model that blends hospital level safety standards and person-centered care. So we ensure that quality and consistency, no matter what environment we walk into. At home, we bring those hospital standards into unpredictable spaces. On a practical side, we manage complex medication schedules, infusion therapies, device care, and infection prevention using our ANTT principles. Obviously, in hospitals, nurses have clean rooms, good lighting, and height adjustable services. Whereas at home, we might be working from the kitchen table. There's a cat wandering around, the kids may be running around, and we can have limited spaces, so we have to adapt. Because safety doesn't depend on the building, it depends on how we work within it. And then there's the emotional side, so building the trust and the rapport with our patients and their families, supporting anxiety, isolation, and the psychological impact of illness. And acting as their advocate to the patient's voice in their own care. So one of the first steps we do in our model of care is the home assessment visit. So this sets the foundation for everything that comes next. So we walk through what treatment will look like in their own space, what nurses will do, what equipment is needed, and how they should be safely stored. And then how to set up areas for the nurse coming in to do the infusion or clinical tasks that fit into their patient's daily lives. So it's much more than a checklist. It's the moment that we start building that trust and helping the patient understand that, this is doable, this is safe, and they're not alone in this. So we also focus on live teaching as well. So we give hands-on practice, building confidence step by step if the patient or the family member wants to be trained to administer. So we break things down into clear, simple actions, reinforcing learning across multiple visits until they feel safe doing it independently. And that education piece is what helps families feel confident when we're not there. So we do get patients that will tell us openly, you know, they're scared that they'll do something wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the emotional landscape of home care. And it's why the structure of our model, paired with compassionate nursing practice, matters so much. So we listen, we reassure, and we advocate. Home care changes the experience of the treatment. So it reduces stress, restores control. People don't, you know, our patients don't have to travel to hospitals and sit in waiting rooms or reorganise life around the hospital. Treatment becomes part of their living, not something that life has to stop for. We see fewer infections from avoiding that exposure and better adherence because, you know, we can fit the care around their daily routines. So ultimately, home care isn't just about treatment, it's about restoring normality for our patients and families.
Wow, that's awesome. You know, I often looked at the nurse as almost like an interpreter. Like when my son was going through his surgery, that 14-hour surgery was a big deal. It was hard on the parents too, even though I didn't have to undergo it. It was still like a little tough there. And the one thing that was tough on my wife, especially because I work in this industry, so I kind of understand the pharma speak. But you're almost like an interpreter. So these complex medical conditions and complex medical delivery, you guys act kind of like a I don't know, almost like a friend, a mentor, an interpreter. You fill so many different roles. There's even probably I don't know, maybe a motherly role, or there's like another role that's just a certain sense of kindness that it's hard to kind of quantify, but it's good. That's I can say that. So that's really interesting. I've got kind of a second part of the question for you, so you're not quite yet done here. But so my second part of the question is: there's a lot of people involved in home-based care. What makes the coordination between nurses, doctors, and families kind of challenging sometimes? And maybe once you kind of give us those challenges, can you tell us a little bit how you overcome some of them?
Yeah, so obviously, yeah, as you say, home-based care involves a whole network of people. We've got consultants, GPs, specialist nurses, pharmacists, perhaps physios, home care providers like us, and of course, the family as the caregivers. So one thing that is essential in a system this complex is clear communication and shared care plans. So home-based care doesn't happen in isolation. Everyone needs to be connected, informed, and working from the same plan. And that's where the challenges can begin, especially in rare disease. So there could be fragmented communication. People work on different systems, they have different updates, different timelines. So, you know, a dose change might reach one person, but not another. There's no single owner, so everybody holds part of the picture, but no one sees the whole thing. So families end up relaying information while they're already under pressure. And then we've got translating the what into the how. So doctors decide what needs to happen and nurses make it work, whatever the home environment. And families need to understand the why and feel confident doing it. And then there's the emotional strain on caregivers. So they're tired, worried about making mistakes and trying to manage complex routines, which affects how they hear information and how decisions are made. So at Sciensus, we have a clinical liaison lead, which becomes, they're so important to our team. So the clinical liaison lead is a nurse within our company that sits between home care and the hospital team. So they join regular discussions and stay in contact with the specialist centres and make sure that updates flow both ways. They smooth that transitions, clarify plans, and stop important details from falling through any gaps. Nurses often become that bridge and translating complex instructions into practical steps that families can follow. We spot early changes and holding that shared care plan together so patients always feel safe and supported. And when that coordination works well, everything improves: safety, confidence, and outcomes. Alongside of all of this as well, we've got another important aspect of home-based care, and that's transition from paediatric to the adult services.
Yep.
So it's not just a transition that's switched at the age of 17, 18. It's a gradual process that we start talking about when the younger person is around 12 years old. So for many families, this is one of the most nerve-wracking stages, because they're leaving a team they've known for years and moving into a more adult-focused model of care. And to make that shift feel safer, the paediatric nurse and the adult nurse will do joint visits. So they'll meet the young person and the family together in their home, so that the relationship starts early before the handover happens. So it gives that young person a chance to ask questions, express any worries, and begin getting comfortable with that new team. And it supports the whole family through a time that is both a clinical transition and that developmental transition towards independence, self-advocacy, and adulthood. When we get that transition right, young people don't feel abandoned or lost between the services. They feel supported, prepared, and confident as they enter the adult system. So as you can see, care beyond the hospital is more than medicine. So it's about a partnership with the patient and the families. It's about empowerment and restoring dignity and confidence for people and families living with rare diseases. So when we get that transition right, when nurses can bridge teams, translate plans, and stand alongside the families and the patients, they don't just cope. We want them to live well. And, for me, and I know I speak on behalf of our nurses, it's such a privilege for us to be invited into our patients' home. And we, as you said, Ray, we do become kind of part of their family.
Yeah.
And we build those relationships with them. It's really lovely.
You brought up some really interesting points, and I may be going a little off script here, but I do think that it's interesting that you're not just kind of treating the patient, but especially when it comes to kids, you may be treating or talking to the caregivers to interpret stuff, right? So it really is a whole family thing. And I used to think a caregiver was always, the parents, but I've learned since being in this communities, these different communities for a while, that it can be lots of people. Sometimes it's grandparents. Almost typically, mothers seem to do better than fathers, from what I hear, but like, it can sometimes take the whole group. And I also really take to heart the transition from pediatric to adulthood, because you're right, as a kid and things like that, even in my own community, we got to be really good friends with our pediatric neurologist, and he was the guy who guided everything. And then we didn't have to explain everything over and over to him again, because he knew all of our family history. So when we had to go to an adult neurologist, it was like, oh, now we have to explain the whole thing over again. It was like relearning. And again, like I say, this might be a little off script, but Mark, I'd love to hear just what some of the challenges you've heard from in kind of that transition from pediatric to adulthood, because I know there's also some people who may transition FSHD that may not require a wheelchair, but there are some that do. So that's got to be a pretty dramatic thing, at least based on my family's experience. So what things have you seen?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's hard, but I think Helen said when it works best is when there's the gradual handoff. When both pediatric and adult are together and they begin to work together there. It's a much more natural, much more congenial handoff for the patient. It makes them feel more comfortable, less uncertain, those kinds of things.
And Sharif, just again, maybe a little off script here, but what's your take on the difference between the transition? Do you have anything to add to that?
I think Helen has really covered it really well, but it's a safety netting. So when you get used to a person coming into your home or a group of people coming into your home for a number of time, and then you move into a different service, it feels like you're starting all over again.
Yeah.
And you very rightly said, Ray, you had your relationship with the neurologist, and suddenly you move into different doctor who's starting asking the same questions that you've been through again, and you say, why this is not read from my file? And I think we see this quite a lot.
Yeah.
Why do we have to go all the same questions again? And it feels very frustrating. So I always tend to try and explain to my patients, although I have full faith in the team before, but I'd like to form my own opinion on why we're doing what we're doing. So I ask questions for satisfy myself, really, not to question anything that happened before. And people do respond well to that. But I think we can do things better. Certainly we can do things better. What Helen gave us an example of is early introduction of a new nurse that's coming to take over the care with this old nurse that has been part of the family for a number of years. That raises confidence. That removes any ambiguity. That removes suspicion, and it helped the transition to go smoothly. Hospitals, unfortunately, were not very good at doing this because busy time schedules, not doing clinics at the same time, and I think that's why for some chronic disease and rare disease, and some of the cancers even, having that ability to do this in a home environment seems to be much more sensible and makes a lot more sense than a sterile environment in the hospital where you've been waiting for a few hours to see the specialist or whatever happens, and then suddenly you're bombarded with new questions that you've answered many times before. It feels sort of leggy. I think we can do a lot better.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, maybe one last thing here, and then I'm going to move over to Jib here. But Helen, just one more thing about the kind of family caregiving. Do you see an impact from the siblings on like a treatment for treating people? And do you see anything from a sibling perspective? Because again, we're talking about the holistic view here of the whole environment in the home. So when you enter a home, you're entering a family's home. It's not just you're entering the patient's home. This is an entire home with different people living there. Can you just make a comment on that?
Yeah, so the siblings, we like to get them involved, and you usually generally find they'll come up and chat to you about what we're doing as well for the patient. And sometimes they help us with observations and stuff, so we really get them involved in the care that they're doing, because they want to be doing that and helping their siblings. So we do get that quite a lot. Lots of families helping.
That's really helpful. This is eye-opening. Jib, how has the Sciensus home care model made things easier for you, either in terms of daily life, comfort, or even sticking to your treatment?
So yeah, it's been really helpful to me. You see, my ERT, the thing I realized quite quickly was that any changes you notice are so tiny, you're not going to spot them on a week to week. It's going to be over a period of months, 6 to 12 months. Then you'll look back and think, okay, yeah, I couldn't do that before. I couldn't walk that far. My leg doesn't hurt anymore, for example. Yeah. But the home care means that those tiny changes aren't then swamped by the tiredness effects of dragging yourself to hospital every week to get that 5-hour treatment and then coming back home. It means you can actually function as an actual member of society and get on with life.
Good.
Let me ask you another question too, Jib. What advice would you give for new patients?
I would say just the one thing that really hit me the hardest was when a friend of mine with the same condition took me aside one day and said, Jib, the MPS isn't going to be the thing that kills you. It's going to be something else. Some other part of life will do that. It's not the MPS. So just live with it. Don't suffer with it, live with it. Accept it as your friend and teach it as a limit and that way. Just work with it. If you can do something, work with it. If you can't, if it's stopping you, then work around it. And that really helped me, because not only was the tiredness and everything else, but the fact that I ran into this guy every week and we got in through our clinical trial together was one of the reasons we got through it, was because every week I knew I'd meet someone with the same condition as me.
Great. So if you had to give some advice to industry about the home care setting, what advice would you give? And then I'm going to ask Cinzia to kind of follow up on that, just to kind of get her take. But I'd like to hear it from the patient first.
I would say talk to the patients straight away, because
there you go.
The pediatric care is great, but they talk to your parents, and with all due respect, the parents don't know what you're going through.
No, absolutely. Chinzi, I'm sure you can add on to that, but I know Chinzi well enough to know that she fully supports that. So, but
yeah, of course, we fully support it. I have to say that when we are in the more commercial setting, that is something that we do, right? We have the patient support program where we support patient care at home. Especially in my company, we have a lot of products that require infusion, right? So avoiding the travel to the infusion center and getting the infusion at patient home for sure is very the right things to do. Where we struggle a lot is in the clinical trial setting, because there, every time that we try to implement the decentralized component, we have multiple challenges, especially in Europe, a big institution driven by the DPO, right, for the data protection officer and the process to implement following the GDPR that require a lot of procedural and bureaucratic work, right? That in many institutions we collaborate with that and it's okay. In others, it's a little bit more a challenge. So I think as a need and as a community focus on the patient and people suffering with rare disease, I think probably we need to press more and more together to ensure that when something makes sense, like in this case, and moving to decentralized components of clinical trials in a safe environment for patient, because we need always to think about the safe environment. Everybody need to work all in the same direction, right? And try to work together overcoming the challenges.
Oh, well said. Alrighty. Well, I see we only have about 10 minutes left, but I do have a couple more questions here. I'm going to switch back over to Mark here. This is one for you, Mark. You know, patient advocacy groups play a big role in shaping the future of care. I personally think the FSHD Society is one of the best, but I know I'm a little biased. How do they make sure patient voices are heard, to Jib's point, by regulators and researchers? Like, how can you help facilitate or bridge that?
Yeah, first off, I believe that the patient voice through the advocacy organizations, especially in rare disease, are horribly undervalued. And if they're undervalued, then they're underutilized. It was interesting that Dr. Frida Lewis Hall, former chief medical officer at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, said the two things that really make a difference in expediting drugs to families, and only two things. She called it out. The first thing was collective intent. She said that fusion of thought that comes from a shared sense of urgency. That's how she defined collective intent. And she said the second thing, and only the second thing, in all her research, she said, was the patient advocate. She said patients typically are relegated to just a corner of research or a corner of the clinical experience, or we'll ask your opinion and check a box as we move forward with drug development or something like that. The companies that really accelerate and really advance understand, and not all advocacy groups are like this, not all advocacy groups are that developed yet, but more and more, especially in rare disease, are led by people who understand and know the drug development pipeline. They understand, they have a working knowledge of what goes on in industry. They have a working knowledge of what goes on with regulators. They have a working knowledge of what goes on in the clinic and with clinicians and with researchers. And they have an intimate knowledge of what goes on with the family. And so they're positioned better than any group I know. And I'm not biased. They're positioned better than anybody I know, as objective as I can look at the overall ecosystem in rare disease or in any disease setting. That a good, well-informed, understanding the ecosystem patient advocacy group, they're the ones that can get everybody around the table and get them collaborating. Regulators, researchers, clinicians, industry, all in a collaboration kind of way. It's interesting. I talk a lot. We have roughly 1 million people worldwide that have FSHD. It's a number we use for now anyway. And figuratively, I tell our people, we need to speak with one voice, 1 million strong, one voice in unison. I think a lot of times the image of patient advocacy groups advocating or lending their voice is almost rabid demands that are unreasonable. And yes, that brings activity and action to it and awareness, but it's quickly passed off. But Sharif, you said something and I wrote it down. Great advocacy groups lead with evidence-based research. They lead with data-informed advocacy, and they create platforms and programs that literally de-risk the field. So much so that a recent large biotech that reevaluated their whole drug development pipeline, the global advocacy lead said, Mark, we've chosen to make FSHD our lead candidate and stopped other programs.
Wow.
Because
That's
of
great.
how the society has de-risked the field.
That's great.
And I use that as an illustration. There are scores, if not hundreds, of patient advocacy groups that are just like ours. I'm a great thief. I'm not very innovative. So I take what I can from the best of the best. The cystic fibrosises of the world and leukemias and lymphomas and even, you know, I mean, the big ones that are working well in that regard. And so there's lots and lots of organizations like ours, especially in rare disease, because they have to.
Yeah.
They have to be that informed. So, it frustrates me when they're undervalued, but the voice of the patient, when focused and data empowered, has more than enough weight or muscle, if you will, in our muscle disease, to move the needle and to move it effectively and literally reduce timelines down from development to treatment.
Way to go. I completely agree, Mark. I mean, listen, got about 4 minutes left, and I need about 3 for my colleague Julie to kind of close us out here. But I'm going to leave one final thought here from our industry perspective, and this is for Cinzia, because now that you're talking about kind of gathering evidence and trying to de-risk things and stuff like that, can you tell us how you involve patients directly when designing a clinical trial or even collecting kind of that real-world data?
Mm-hmm. I think following Mark's comments, we put the patient at the table, right? Because that was what we were telling. We don't want to be at the center. We would like to be at the table with you. So we start to involve the patient advocacy group since the moment that we plan development. We have patient advisory group that we create. We partner with them for the development of our protocols, and we look with them, and we partner a lot with both the big association in the United States, but also in Europe, using the framework of the European Reference Network that are supported by EMA and have the European EPAG, in that following Mark and Sharif also comments, they are very powerful because this is the infrastructure through which the advocacy group in Europe and the patients are all connected, and they share the data through their registry that drive with the data the ability for not only for physician to take decision on treatment, but also for industry to take decision on how design it best the protocol, right? And then we keep this ongoing relationship for the entire duration of our development plan, because in rare disease we start research and then we discover and develop, right? And so we need to have a close partnership together.
Thanks, Cinzia. Unfortunately, our time is getting really short here, but I would like to close us out by having Julie Gosper come back on once again and just kind of close us out here, because I've really appreciated everybody joining today. I think it's been fantastic. So Julie, let me hand it over to you.
Thanks, Ray. And thank you to all of our panelists and moderator, and to everyone who shared your time to join today. So what we've heard reinforces a simple truth. Progress in rare disease happens through connection, collaboration, and community, between science and lived experience, between existing clinical evidence, real-world care and prospective data collection for ongoing insight and evidence, and importantly, between the people delivering support and the people receiving it. Let's make sure we first talk to the patient. The insights shared from patients, clinicians, and industry leaders remind us that even as therapies advance, the everyday challenges for families remain very real. Isolation, emotional strain, access, coordination, diagnosis, and fragmented care. Sciensus accelerates access to orphan and complex medicines across Europe by connecting biopharma with hard-to-find rare disease patients through integrated distribution in home care, digital support, and real-world evidence generation. We are honoured to be part of strengthening the partnerships that matter across the rare disease community, including bringing hope and empowerment. As we mark Rare Disease Day 2026, let's carry forward what today represents: solidarity, visibility, and real commitment, not just highlighting challenges, but accelerating solutions. We look forward to continuing this work together. Thank you and goodbye for now.
Thanks, Julie.